Mic check 1 2. It's a Y2K collector, and if you like beat 'em ups, you might want to check these out for the Nintendo DS. The first being Naruto Sasuke. This is or Naruto Shippuden, Naruto versus Sasuke. This is one of the games in the Naruto series on the Nintendo DS that started on the Game Boy Advance. You have Naruto Ninja Council, and I think it goes all the way up to like Ninja Council 4 or 5. I can't remember. You guys let me know down in the comments below. But it's pretty much just a series of beat 'em ups based on the Naruto series. In my opinion, this is one of the better installments in that series, just from a gameplay standpoint. When I play this Naruto Shippuden game on the DS, it reminds me a lot of the Dragon Ball Adventure game that came out on the Game Boy Advance, which again is another beat 'em up, but just based on the Dragon Ball Z series. So I'm a fan of that type of gameplay style, and if you're into that, you will like this Naruto game. The best part about it is that it's not expensive at all. Well, at least it wasn't. This was like a $17 game, but this is one of those games that's starting to slowly creep up in price for the DS. As more and more people play it and more people like it, it's becoming one of those games that people want to add to their DS collection. But this is a good beat 'em up if you're into that. The next game that we have here is Thor. I've talked about this game before. A lot of people probably walk past Thor thinking it's a lot like the other Marvel games that get ported to the DS, like the Spider-Man games or the Hulk games. They really did something unique with this Thor in that it is not basically a port of a 3D adventure game. This is actually a 2D side-scrolling game, which utilizes classic beat 'em up mechanics, and it kind of incorporates a lot of Thor's abilities and powers, including his ability to create wind with Mjolnir, as well as his ability to throw Mjolnir in different directions. The boss battles are epic. The fighting is pretty good, and it's got a pretty cool story. I like the way they utilize both screens on the DS to kind of just maximize the playing field. So I think this is one that a lot of people will enjoy. Again, Thor, this game was like a $13 game. This is another one that's slowly creeping up in price as people start to realize that it's not like another clunky Marvel game, that there's actually some pretty good depth to this game as far as like it being a beat 'em up game. So I think a lot of people will like this one. This is one that I would definitely consider adding to the collection. Another one here is Viewtiful Joe. I'm a fan of all things Viewtiful Joe. I've always been a fan of the Viewtiful Joe games. Viewtiful Joe was a game that I had way back when I initially got my GameCube back in the early 2000s. This is pretty much just another installment, similar gameplay. I haven't played this version too much, so I don't have a ton of commentary on it, but it's pretty much just another installment in the Viewtiful Joe series. And if you understand the basic mechanics of Viewtiful Joe, basically you're able to slow down time to execute combos and different moves and things like that. It's a side-scrolling beat 'em up that's based on like a comic. It has like this whole comic book theme to it. I'm a fan of it. I added this one to the collection through a trade. I had some credit that I needed to burn at a mom and pop game store, so I actually used that to get Viewtiful Joe. Now, whereas the first two games that I showed you are under $20, then like they average like around 15. Viewtiful Joe is where things start to tick up from a pricing perspective, because Viewtiful Joe is a bit more on the expensive side, and this is where you're going to start entering into the $40 to $45 range for a beat 'em up. But still a good beat 'em up. Some people might not think it's worth that price tag, but I think it's definitely worth a shot if you're into beat 'em ups and you like the Viewtiful Joe series. The next game that I've got for you here is Fullmetal Alchemist, Dual Sympathy. Now this one's pretty cool. Now there is a Fullmetal Alchemist that came out on the PSP actually, which is also similar to this game in terms of it being a beat 'em up. But this game is just really sick in terms of the move sets that you have. There's different characters that you can play as, I believe. And I'm really just a fan of the sprite work in this game. You have really large characters that take up this screen here. It's not super linear. You don't just move left to right, but you can actually move up and down, which I like. It kind of gives it that Streets of Rage vibe to it. I think that this one is actually a very good looking beat 'em up game in my opinion. Definitely one that I would recommend you check out if you're into beat 'em ups. It follows the Fullmetal Alchemist storyline, which is a very popular anime if I'm not mistaken. I've never been too much into anime outside of like Dragon Ball Z and like Sailor Moon. I did get into One Punch Man. I thought One Punch Man was pretty good, but I know there's a ton of different anime out there that are just classic, and I really need to step my anime game up, but definitely one that I would recommend checking out. This is a sleeper beat 'em up. Again, this one is going to be a little bit more on the expensive side, and by expensive I mean like in the $40 range, so it's not going to be like $20 or anything. A little bit more of a financial investment in this one, but definitely worth a look. If you don't want to pay the money, definitely look up some gameplay footage of this game if you're interested, and that should help you make your decision. It's been a really long time since I've played really any of these DS games. I don't play my DS really that often, so my memory on a lot of these might be a little foggy, but definitely a good one to check out in my opinion. Usually, because I've sold off games out of my DS collection, anything that I still have, it's because I thought it was pretty good and worth keeping. Here's another one that's worth checking out. So this is the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3. Now, this series, I believe, was made of it, like the Ninja Turtle series. This series was made available, if I'm not mistaken, on the Xbox, GameCube, and PlayStation 2. And I'm not sure if it was made available, if all three installments are made available on the DS. I know I have 1 and 2 on the GameCube. I know there's a 3 that I had on the PS2 at one point. Maybe it's been a while, so maybe I'm off. But I think this one is pretty unique. This is a very cool beat 'em up. I really like this one. For one, you can play it 4-player wireless, which I think is really sick, especially for a handheld. I don't know if that option works anymore, because I don't even know if you can still connect like DS consoles to the internet anymore, if it has the capability. But this one is really cool. You can definitely use different attacks. I think you can combine attacks in this one if I'm not mistaken, and there's a lot of stages. The sprite work in this, again, very good looking, a very beautiful game in my opinion. That's a big part of the reason why I really like these beat 'em ups, is that they have that 2D sprite work that's just very attractive, that's almost timeless. You know, beat 'em ups, 2D sprite based beat 'em ups are timeless in my opinion. I think that they just withstand the test of time, and you still have games coming out on the Switch that kind of mimic a lot of the artwork and graphics that you saw back in the day. One that comes to mind is the new Marvel Cosmic Universe, or I can't remember the name. I think it was announced during the latest Nintendo Direct, but it's basically a Marvel beat 'em up that's coming out, where you can play as like Captain America, Spider-Man, Storm, Wolverine. They have a few characters. That is going to be sick, and they're doing that a lot this year. I feel like 2025 is really about the return back to the 2D sprite-based gameplay. When you think about like Power Rangers, Rita's Rewind, you think about the new Terminator 2 game that's coming out, you think about the new Shinobi game that's coming out, you think about the new 2D Ninja Gaiden that's coming out. I think it's called Ragebound. There's so many, like, they're bringing back so many classic franchises, but they're making them into these 2D sprite-based style games. So I think that it makes for a great experience. Like I said, that type of graphical style is timeless, and I think it's going to make for a really great gameplay experience. And it's easy for like non-gamers to pick up and play. Like, one of the best things about Ninja Turtle Shredder's Revenge, in my opinion, is how user-friendly it is. You know, I have a 4-year-old who can pick up and play that game. I have people that don't like video games but know Ninja Turtles, and they find it interesting enough to pick up and play, because it is a bit of a button masher, but they do incorporate things to make someone who's a little bit more advanced with video games feel like they're actually doing something. They actually have moves that you can do in Shredder's Revenge to kind of help break up the monotony of button mashing, as well as the supers that you can perform as well. So I think just this return to 2D sprite-based gameplay is actually really cool. This game is not cheap. This is not going to be a cheap one. As a matter of fact, during the height of like 2020, this was actually a really expensive game. for some reason. It was like over $100, but it's come down. It's been cut basically in half. I would say a complete in-box copy of this game is going to run you somewhere around 60, between like $55 and $70. I've seen the price range all over the place, but a complete in-box copy of this game, I would say probably average somewhere around 65. It probably doesn't price chart at that price, but that's what I think people are asking for this one right now. But again, definitely one worth checking out. If you like beat 'em ups, you're collecting for the DS, I recommend you take a look at Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3. Last but not least, this one is a bit of an oddball. Wasn't going to include it, but it's one that you may want to check out. And this is Tokyo Beatdown on the DS. This is one that I rarely ever hear anyone talk about. This is a Atlas beat 'em up game. For those of you who know about Atlas, Atlas is one of the heavy hitting makers and producers of video games from back in the day. Atlas is, in my opinion, is right up there with Konami, is right up there with like Square, it's right up there with Capcom, Sunsoft. I'm trying to think of some of those other classic companies that made some really classic games. So Atlas is definitely well known. This is more of a 3D or 2.5D arcade style beat 'em up game that incorporates not just like hand-to-hand combat fighting, but it also incorporates like some shoot 'em up action as well. I think this one is a little bit more difficult to get into. I don't think Atlas was really known for their action games, to be quite honest with you. That really wasn't their cup of tea. Atlas, I think, is more known for their RPGs. I think they've got some classic RPGs underneath their belt. This was an interesting take from Atlas, but I find the gameplay in this one to be a little slow, and it can get a little boring. This game can get a little bit boring. I'm not gonna hype this game up like, oh man, this is an amazing game. I've struggled to play this game for more than 20 minutes multiple times, just because it's just not fun. It's just not that fun to me. I don't know. I like beat 'em ups. I think beat 'em ups are best in a 2D format. I haven't really played many beat 'em ups that are fun in the 3D format, with the exception of Die Hard Arcade. That's one exception. I'm trying to think of another exception of a 3D beat 'em up. God Hand, might be another exception. And then maybe like the Fist of the North Star games. Those are like some pretty decent 3D beat 'em ups. It's hard to find really good 3D beat 'em ups, especially retro 3D beat 'em ups. Because if you start thinking about retro 3D beat 'em ups, you're thinking about games like Fighting Force. If you're going 6th generation, you're thinking about games like Urban Reign, Bouncer, Beatdown. The list goes on. They really tried to do something with the 3D beat 'em up action, but what I personally think would have been amazing, and I'm really shocked that this has never been done. Like, I'm really, really shocked that this has never been done, and I may be putting this idea out there now, but why have we never gotten a Street Fighter 2 adventure beat 'em up game? Like, why haven't we ever gotten that? Why have we never gotten a game where you could play as Ken or Ryu and you play it as a beat 'em up game, an adventure game with different stages and levels, and clearly the final boss is M. Bison, but you can play as any one of the, Street Fighter characters, and depending on which Street Fighter character you choose, you play different levels based on the character that you choose. So, for instance, if you choose Chun-Li, you're going to follow the storyline of an undercover cop, right? If you pick Ken, you're going to follow the storyline of a rich American playboy. If you pick Ryu, you'll follow the storyline of a lone warrior seeking the next greatest challenge. If you pick Gal, obviously you're picking a general in the Air Force or whatever position Gal held. I think Capcom needs to do that. Capcom needs to make a Street Fighter adventure beat 'em up game. That needs to happen. And maybe I'm speaking that into existence, but I can guarantee you right now, if they made that, that would fly off of the freaking shelves. Because imagine being able to play a beat 'em up game as Ryu and do Hadoukens, Shoryukens, Chuck Nougats. I can't remember how you say that, the flying helicopter kick. But imagine if you could do that in a beat 'em up style, And as you play through the level, you charge up the same way you would charge up to do a super, and you could do supers in a beat 'em up game. Come on, Capcom, you guys are sleeping on that. That's like a fantastic idea. I think they need to do that. It's just my thoughts and opinions. But you guys let me know what you think. Let me know what you think about these beat 'em ups here on the DS. Let me know what you think about all the 2D beat 'em up games that are coming out this year. And let me know if you think a 2D sprite-based Street Fighter adventure beat 'em up game would be killer on the Switch too. I think that would be classic. But that could just be me. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments, and I'll catch you in the next video. It's the Y2K Collector. Take it easy.